Working Cows Podcast, episode 398. This episode is brought to you by Understanding Ag.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag studios. And this episode is brought to you by Understanding Ag. We've been fortunate to feature a number of Understanding Ag's regenerative farming and ranching experts on the podcast over the years. In that time, Understanding Ag's reputation for helping producers understand and successfully and profitably apply money-saving regenerative principles and practices has only grown. And there are two primary reasons for that. First, Understanding Ag's consultants are farmers and ranchers who've been there, done that on their own regenerative farms. And second, Understanding Ag's consultants aren't in the business to sell you costly inputs. They get no commissions and you get no pressure. Just profit-building solutions for your operation. Learn more at understandingag.com and discover the hope in healthy soil. That's www.understandingag.com. Very excited to be joined today by John Hayes. John is a consultant with Understanding Ag, and he and his family have recently made a transition to marketing proteins, direct marketing proteins to their end consumer, and kind of made this transition right in the middle of 2020 and have continued to expand those offerings. And so we're going to talk to him today kind of about just the ins and outs of that, the logistics of it, how they have found ways to make it work, and some of the ways that they have really sought to lower the barrier to entry for people to start buying directly from the farm that is raising the products. So, John, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Yep, glad to be here, Clay. It's quite an honor.
Well, yeah, I'm excited for the conversation. Marketing pastured proteins. I think, a lot of the conversations that we end up having, even some of the squabbles within agriculture that we end up having are actually about the middleman and about how much the middleman is or isn't making. And if we can go about marketing our own products, we can cut that middleman out or cut more of the middlemen out and keep more of those food dollars in our pockets. Has that been your experience in this venture that you've been on?
Yeah, certainly. It comes along with a lot of extra work, but yes, we are capturing more of that food dollar. So,
yeah, and let's just kind of set the context as you're wont to do when you're talking to people from Understanding Ag. You got to set the context. So, yeah. What is the context of your operation, and what are some of the products that you're marketing?
Okay, we're located in west central Indiana, Bainbridge, Indiana, which is about 30 miles west of Indianapolis. We have about 3.5 million people to market to within probably an hour of where we live. So quite a big market. Our operation consists. It's totally a grazing operation. We raise grass-fed and grass-finished beef. We raise pastured layers and eggs. We raise pastured chicken and pastured pork, and obviously direct market that to not only central Indiana, but beyond.
What did the startup process look like for you? I mean, has this been generations? I'm assuming not. That's not generally the generational model that gets passed on from generation to generation. So what did the process of getting started look like?
Well, my family and I, wife and I and kids, we've raised grass-finished beef for 20-some years. Did it very conventionally for quite some time. And I guess what prompted us to start the direction that we've gone for the last few years is when the whole country, or I say the whole world, went inside their house in 2020 and didn't come back out for a while. It became very obvious that the food chain was was all of a sudden turned on its head and broken, and people were having trouble uh, accessing food, whether it be quality food or just food at all. That became a concern. And we've always been the kind of people that raise what we eat and eat what we raise. And like I said, we've been marketing grass-fed beef for a number of years, but on a limited scale, quarter halves and wholes, doing the freezer beef type thing like a lot of people do. And we made the decision during that time to really expand this and create a local food source for people. So you have some food security and know where your food's coming from.
Sure. And so were there pastured layers, poultry, pork, were those present prior to 2020, or was that an expansion?
No, the beef was the only piece of it prior to 2020, and all the and well, beef, we did raise a limited amount of pork, but the chicken is and more of the pigs has come along since then.
And then did you start marketing individual cuts in addition to quarters, halves, and wholes?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, we did.
And in 2020, were farmers markets shut down in your neck of the woods?
Frankly, I don't even recall.
Uh-huh.
We've never done a farmer's
Okay.
market.
All right. So, yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that, is how are you marketing those individual cuts? Is it kind of like a drop location or shipping, or what's the actual, how do you get it to the end consumer?
Yeah, there's three different ways people can get our products. One, they can come to the farm and pick it up. Uh, Two, we offer home delivery within the central Indiana. And then the third way they can get it, if they're outside of our delivery area or don't want to come pick it up, then we do ship nationwide,
Okay.
UPS ground shipping.
Sure. What do you think the key for you has been for getting traction with finding those people who want to get the food from you?
People are certainly looking to connect with their food. Making it convenient for them to do so, I think, it has really been a driver. We've leveraged social media. Obviously, we have an e-commerce website, but what's really driven this is just trying to make it convenient for them to get our products.
Sure. Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? The ways that you've sought to make it convenient?
Yeah, the shipping and the home delivery are the two convenient ways, and we ventured into shipping before home delivery. Got a little bit of traction with shipping, and frankly, shipping's still a very very small part of our overall sales. And so I started looking at what does the consumer want? Because we're in we're marketing to an urban consumer primarily. And what do they want? They want convenience. And so if we can bring it to their doorstep and get it to them, they go on the website and order, and then we can get it to them in a very convenient manner, then that's really been a big help for us.
Is it deliveries to a neighborhood or to individual homes?
Individual homes. We've stayed away from the drop off locations again for the convenience factor on both sides. As the from the delivery standpoint, I'd rather just go to the home and drop it off than I would hope that they show up when I'm sitting there waiting on them. And then from their side as well, they don't have to come to me. I'm bringing it directly to them.
Sure. And is it something that it can sit on their doorstep like an Amazon package, or do you try to catch them when they're at home?
No, dude, to try to keep packaging, coolers and all that basically to eliminate those, we ask that if they're not going to be home, that they just set a cooler out that we can drop it in on their doorstep.
You mentioned convenience kind of being a big driver for kind of the pain point of your consumer that you're trying to get them over that. I'm imagining that extends to the cuts of meat that you end up selling as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what do you do with the rest? The cuts that they don't want?
Uh, Not a huge problem. Ground beef moves very well. That's our biggest selling item, whether it be individually or in bundles. So ground beef's not a problem. Um, some of the roast we've learned over time, don't really move, and we're starting to eliminate some of those cuts and just grind them instead. So uh, having promoting some bundles and putting things in bundles certainly helps. We'll still sell eight quarters, halves, whole beef, but we have a number of different bundles that we package things up that seem to be very popular. So
How do people generally discover you or find you, when they're looking? Where are they coming across your products? Is it still word of mouth, or is there other
definitely
channels?
word of mouth, but the Facebook has been very effective for us. My wife's used Facebook for many, many years to promote what we're doing and just build awareness of what's going on. So that's been a very big tool. And then more recently, I'd say in the last couple of years, we've started working with Google ads and some very intentional and targeted Google ads to get the word out, and that's really building some traction as well.
Sure. Was there a learning curve with the ads and those kinds of things?
Oh yeah, most certainly.
And were there courses or anything that you took to help kind of get over that learning curve, or just trial and error?
A lot of reading, a lot of studying. There's two or three books that we've read, and some consulting that we've hired to help us with that to learn how to properly market to people, I guess might be the way to say it.
Sure. Any books that come to mind that would be recommended reading?
Yeah, one of the big helps for me especially was Donald Miller. I believe
Mm.
it's called Building a Story Brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm not sure I got the title right on that,
That's
but
pretty close. That's pretty close.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
taking Donald Miller's course right now on a couple of different courses through his Business Made Simple online
yeah, Business
platform.
Made Simple, Marketing Made Simple. Those really resonated with me as far as you need to solve a problem for your customer, and you need to be the guide and not the hero of the story.
Yeah.
So that I think is instrumental in being successful in this is it's not about us, it's about you.
Yep.
What can we do to help you survive and thrive?
Yeah, and I think one big portion of his course, I haven't taken the marketing course yet, but one of the big portions of his course is the customer is the hero, right?
Yeah,
Is part of
yeah,
it. So
yeah. So I think we've learned that that's very true. That if you get that focus right, then you're helping people solve a problem and helping them survive and thrive in their life.
yeah, by the time this comes out, I will have spoken at the South Dakota Grassland Coalition's convention, and I'm going to recommend that course in the course of that talk. So it's
Yeah.
fitting. Good stuff. Yeah, I really appreciate Donald Miller and his approach and the stuff that he's been doing over the last few years. I think that the other side of this conversation, obviously, to me anyways, is just managing the complexity at the farm level too. How do I mean, you've got pastured layers, did you say broilers too?
Yes.
Broilers and beef and pigs. So just kind of walk me through the seasonality of some of those things. I mean, there's obviously busier times, and then also keeping things in stock, having the stuff available. Always, consistency. I think that's a big part of it. Especially in podcasting, you want to have an episode released as much as possible at the same time every week, and so I think it's probably the same way. Like, people don't want to always come to your store and find you're sold out, right?
Right.
So I just talk to me first of all. Let's talk about some of the managing the day in, day out complexity of raising these animals, taking care of the chores, getting those things down to a manageable amount of labor, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe a good way to start there is just to talk a little bit about who all's involved and who's doing what here. And my wife, Jenny, she's been the face of the business for since we've started pretty much. Like I said, she's been heavily involved in Facebook in the past. So she's really taken on the biggest part of the marketing and the distribution of this from the beginning. And that's grown out some now. Our oldest daughter, Jordan, is involved on the marketing side as well, and she's also involved some on the production side. So two people pretty much focused on the marketing and distribution. Like I said, Jenny and Jordan are doing that, and then our son Jared is taking care of the cattle and the pigs on a daily basis and involved in, just kind of making sure everything is getting done around there. He does a lot of fencing. He's if there's equipment to be worked on, he's pretty good at that. So he's the boots on the ground every single day out there making sure things are happening. And Jordan's also involved in very involved in the poultry side of things. Poultry's kind of been her specialty and one of her special interests for since she was young, and she oversees the laying operation and the broiler operation. So that's been a really big help to have her be a part of that.
A big part of what you can do, I guess, with the direct marketing is support more people on the same number of acres. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the only way we're able to do that. If we were commodity producers, we wouldn't even be able to support one person full time here if we were just strictly commodity producers. So part of capturing that more of that food dollar, it requires more labor.
Yep.
And you're creating more jobs for local people. We're keeping this money locally and instead of sending it out regionally or globally through the food chain.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Understanding Ag. You've probably noticed that we frequently feature Understanding Ag's experts on our show. Well, there's a good reason for that. Understanding Ag is the world's premier regenerative and adaptive grazing consulting company, which was created for farmers and ranchers by farmers and ranchers. People who have been there, done that on their own regenerative farms. Understanding Ag's consultants aren't in the business to sell you costly inputs. Their sole mission is to help you understand, then grow your profits by applying regenerative principles and practices so you can grow healthier soil, food, farms, and futures, all while reducing input costs. Discover more at understandingag.com. You'll be glad you did. That's www.understandingag.com. Do you have big decisions that you feel like you've got to make in the near future?
Yeah, we've been presented with the opportunity to grow the land base. We've got there's other people around us in the community, other landowners that have come to us and said, "Hey, we really like what you're doing, and can you do this on our place?" And that's all that. We're in corn and soybean country, so all of that ground has been just corn and soybean ground. There's some wooded ground. There might be a little bit of pasture here and there, but it's primarily corn and soybean country. So no fence on it any longer. The fence has been gone for decades. So we got a lot of fence building to do this winter. We got probably another 150 to 200 acres to put fence around this winter for next year. Permanent fence, perimeter fence, and looking at growing and expanding the poultry operation next year with that extra land that's going to be added to the base. Then there's going to be more cattle needed to graze those acres. So we're going to be adding cattle next year. Probably still add pigs next year. Likely, like I said, we'll probably scale up the broiler operation some next year as well.
So how did they come to you? uh, is this a non-operator landowner?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they've been leasing it to
Um,
somebody for cash rent on the corn and soybean acres?
yeah. One of those people came to us as a customer. Didn't know this individual at all. She showed up one day, wanted to buy some pastured proteins and learned about what we were doing there. So came to buy that and saw what we were doing and they are non-farming landowners that have a piece of ground that her grandparents owned. Matter of fact, I grew up about a mile and a half from this property and drove by it every day of my life for many, many years. And she saw what we were doing and she says, "Well, that's what I want to do on my ground. That's what I want to do." She was aware of Kiss the Ground. And she was aware of what was going on in the regenerative space, and she was trying to get her current tenant to go that same direction, but they're very much a cash grain enterprise, and
Mm-hmm.
and not that wasn't their focus. So she says, "Will you work with me and do this here?" And one thing led to another, and here we are. So uh, another one of those opportunities came to us through a workshop that I presented at last spring. There's a Purdue University hosts what they call Indiana Small Farm Conference annually in the spring of the year, and I was invited to present there last spring on the applying the 6 principles of soil health, and there was somebody in the room in that presentation that listened to what we were saying or what I was saying, and then they knew somebody else that was interested in regenerative agriculture, and this person told them, "You need to come and talk to us and see what we're doing." And that meeting occurred in June of this past year, and now we're in the process of converting their place from corn soybean rotation. It's highly erodible ground and shouldn't ever be farmed that way. And now we're in the process of converting it back to perennial pasture.
Wow. Will your lease, is this a lease agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will your lease be less lucrative to them than the cash rent on the corn and soybeans? I mean, are they willingly taking a cut here to go the regenerative direction, or how's that look?
Uh, no, not all of our leases are structured the same. Some are a cash rent situation. Some of them are more of a based on production. How based on animal unit days, and the cash rent situations. Obviously, I've got a lot more risk involved in that, so uh, they're not going to reap as many benefits as the ground becomes more productive. At least not early on. Someday we may sit down and renegotiate those cash rents, but the one that I would rather enter into is the pay by, we come up with a price for per animal unit day of what I'll pay for the forage that the cattle that are going to consume. And as the land improves and becomes more productive, then they get a bigger check.
Sure. Yep.
So they got some skin in the game.
Yep. Yep. Do you think though that the cash rent for corn and soybean acres in your neighborhood are you matching that in those agreements, or maybe someday you'll get there?
Not on the high end. There's some high cash rents that I can't pencil that out. At least starting out. Once we've been a few years down the regenerative path, then yes, I can compete with the high cash rents after a few years. But it probably takes 4 or 5 years to get there before I would entertain paying those kind of numbers.
Right. And last time I checked, there's an I in Indiana, so you're in an I state, and I can imagine that the the cash rent would be pretty high, right? Per acre.
Very competitive.
Yeah.
Very competitive.
Yeah. So you're telling me that you could, after a few years of regenerating a landscape, compete with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Which flies in the face of the people that would say that we can't feed the world with this method of farming, right?
Exactly.
You can't be as profitable as a government subsidized corn and soybean field.
No, you just got to change the way you see things.
Yep.
You just with the cattle alone, we can do that. But then when you start stacking these other enterprises in there, then that's just gravy on top.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, very good. So just what are some of the infrastructure pieces that make this work? How are you containing pastured broilers and layers? What does that look like?
The broilers, we're raising those in hoop houses that they move every day onto a fresh piece of pasture. We have automatic waters in them. There's feeders in there that we fill by hand every day. But we've really fine-tuned that this year and gotten that down to where it's almost as efficient as I think we can get it for the size that we are. And the layers, we're still trying to get that figured out. We've let them free range, and my preference would be to let them free range, but then there's always the predator issue to deal with, and we've suffered through quite a bit of that this year. But so at the moment, we're using some electric netting, and part of the reason we're using that electric netting right now to contain those layers is we just introduced a new batch of pullets in with the other layers this fall, and trying to get them acclimated to the flock. And so once they become better acclimated, we're hopeful that we can take the netting away and just let them free range once again.
Broilers are they're in the hoop house all the time, right? There's no,
Yes.
I mean, and they're moved to fresh grass every day, right? And then
Yeah.
so then the layers, they've got access to the outside, obviously, but the net fencing is keeping predators out and them close, kind of, right?
Yes, yeah, and then we move we set up a large enough piece of netting or large enough area within that netting that they can spend several days in that spot. We probably move the netting about once every 3 or 4 days right now.
Mm-hmm. And what about, are they following the cattle? Is that where the layers are at, following the cattle?
They certain times of the year they do, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Through the summertime, the growing season, we do follow them most of the time, or certainly frequently behind the cattle. But there are times when our operations kind of spread out. It's not all contiguous, so when the cattle are further away from home, it just doesn't make sense to have the laying hens that far away from home, and then the labor required to go tend to them on a daily basis. So the layers end up staying a little closer to home. So at times they're falling behind the cattle, and other times they're on pasture where the cattle haven't been for a while.
Sure. And talk about the pigs. What is that? How are they managed?
Similar fashion. They're we're not fair on any sows. We buy feeder pigs in the springtime and bring them home and get them acclimated to hot wire. Get them hot wire broke. Once we have them hot wire, well, I should back up and say we're getting them at about 8 weeks old. So bring them home, get them acclimated to hot wire, and once we have that done, then they're out on pasture where the only thing between them and the rest of the world's a single strand of polywire.
Wow. And do you have certain places you target with them, things that they do better than another critter?
Yes, yeah. There's places where we want some impact that the pigs can provide that we'll focus on those areas. Maybe it's somewhere that needs a little more disturbance or a disruption that hasn't happened for a while, that we'll use them for that. They're great for clearing out brushy areas and overgrown areas. And then there are times that we're putting them out on pasture as well, and just the same pasture that the cattle would be in, not at the same time, but same pasture, and they're foraging out there on that too.
Yep. How about inventory management? I think both layers and the broilers would probably tend to be a little bit more seasonal in their productivity. So how is inventory management with those two?
The broilers are certainly seasonal. We'll only have broilers, between during the warm times of the year. We'll start process. We'll get broilers early April, and then the first batch, and then we want to be done with broilers by Halloween at the latest, typically, end of October. So sure. we're growing enough, or hoping to grow enough for during that time of the year to get us through through the winter months and into the next growing season. So putting a lot of meat in the freezer during that time.
Yep. And eggs, similar?
Eggs right now we can't keep up with the demand. That this time of year the egg production slows down if you're not putting them inside and putting light on them, and we're not doing that. They're still out on pasture, and we're not putting artificial lighting on them. We're just kind of letting them act the way they would act naturally. And egg production's down some right now, and can't even keep up with the demand that we have. So, that's I don't like being out of product. You said something earlier about it, it's hard to sell something when you're out of stock, and I've always been one that I want to have a well-stocked store. So, that's the challenge for us, is to keep up with the egg demand.
Yep. And probably now this time of year in the holiday season, more egg demand anyways, with baking and stuff like that too. So I think that probably exacerbates the issue with the seasonality of egg production. Are there reasons why you don't put them in an artificial light? Is it quality of eggs? Is it cost, or a combination of all those things?
It's just more of the natural way to do things. We're trying to I hesitate to say mimic nature, but try to let the animal, or the bird in this case, live in as close to its natural way as we can.
Yep. I understand that for sure. And then I suppose if you get to a point of having so many birds around that you can actually fulfill the demand in this time of year, when the production is lower, you probably have way too many eggs at other times of the year. Is that right?
Yep.
And so then that's just kind of you've got to choose which one you want to deal with. Is that the issue?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We don't have the layer operation fine tuned by any means yet. So that's still a very much a work in progress. But
yep.
As far as keep meeting that demand and not having oversupply on the other end.
Yep, for sure. And let's talk a little bit about the beef side too. I guess this is the Working Cows podcast. So,
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the beef side. Actually, I do have another question on the pigs. And I guess all the species, we'll use this as our beef segue, but do the genetics of where those pigs come from matter as far as their ability to finish on grass and those kinds of things?
Yeah, it takes a certain type of pig to do well outdoors. And the typical pig that's raised in confinement today is not that type of pig. So we have sought out breeders with genetics that I'd call them more old-fashioned type genetics. The type of pigs that we used to see 30, 40 years ago that were common. They're not common at all. Matter of fact, they're very hard to find nowadays. So
there was one or five behind every barn, every farmhouse, right?
Yeah.
Back
So
then.
we've been fortunate to, we actually found a new source this year, a breeder that's, not too far from us, maybe an hour or so away, that has a very, very good herd of pigs. That there are about two or three different breeds in there, that he's breeding the type of pig that does very well outdoors, and they've performed extremely well for us.
Hmm. And the same to be said for the chickens and the layers and the broilers. You kind of have a certain type that you really focus on.
Well, the broilers, we're using a Cornish cross type broiler, which that's common in the commercial poultry industry, but they're a fast growing. They produce a double breasted, they're a big double breasted bird, fast growing. So if they were out on pasture, just free range, and I don't suppose they do all that well, but they perform very well in the hoop houses, and getting moved daily on the new pasture. They perform well, but that's still a very conventional type bird, and maybe not as hardy, and don't thrive quite as well. A little more intensive management, but back to trying to give the consumer what they want. That's what the consumers conditioned or been trained to, when they go to buy a chicken breast, that's the kind of chicken breast they expect to buy. So it really hasn't gotten in our way raising that type of broiler.
Sure. Yep. And so, yeah, the beef, similar question on the beef. You've been grass finishing or marketing grass-fed beef for a long time. What have the genetics looked like as in that regard? How have you guys approached that?
Well, we've tried to use pretty much just the everyday genetics out here, and found that doesn't work well in the grass finishing program. The the cattle are too big. They take too long to finish, and those bigger frame cattle just they don't finish well on grass. So over time, our cattle herd or frame size has gotten smaller as time's gone on, and then we find that those do perform very well on grass.
Sure. Yep. And talk about a little bit about the inventory management there. I'd say, is that the easiest one as far as inventory management is concerned of all of the critters?
Not necessarily, because we can't grass finish year round.
Right.
So we're the during the growing seasons, the easiest time to put finish on beef. So we're stocking the freezer. Well, we're just finishing up stocking the freezer this fall. We're pretty heavy on processing in October, November, and then finish up a little bit here in December. And we want 6+ months of inventory in the freezer going into this time of year, because we won't have any more finished beef until uh, late spring, early summer next year.
Right. And you won't have any more until late spring, early summer. Okay.
Yeah.
So you won't do any processing through the winter, basically.
No, it's
Right.
just too hard to get finish on them
Yep.
in the winter time.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that comes down to an economics issue, right? You can
Yeah.
finish beef in the winter, it just costs a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the processing piece of all of this. How are you handling the processing of everything? Pork, broilers, eggs, beef.
Start with eggs. The processing's real simple. We go out and gather them, and we bring them in. We don't wash them. We sell eggs with the bloom on them still, so they don't require refrigeration. So that's real easy.
Did that
The
take education of the consumer? Did you have to educate the consumers about that?
Not much. There's some consumers that wanted that right off the bat, so that was a real easy transition. Or early on with the laying operation, we were washing the eggs, but that's we wanted to get away from that, and once we figured out that we could and felt comfortable moving that direction, that was a real easy transition.
Sure. Yeah. And then as far as the processing of the broilers.
Yeah, the broilers we're lucky to sit in the middle of two USDA inspected uh, broiler plants, processing facilities. They're each about a 2 hour drive, one east, one west. So we'll take the batches of broilers. We'll do about 5 batches a year. We take them to one of those two USDA inspected facilities, and they're processed and turned into cuts, and sometimes just left as holes, and then they'll go into cold storage.
And are those facilities easy to deal with as far as getting slots and all that?
You have to plan. You, I don't ever order a batch of chicks until I have a broiler
Huh.
or a processing date for them.
Wow.
So here in about February, we'll start setting our processing dates for next year. And then once I have the processing dates locked in, then I'll order chicks to arrive to match those processing dates. So there's a lack of poultry processing here in our area, and I think it's the same throughout the country when I talk to other people around the country.
Yeah. What's the scale of these facilities, these processing facilities? Are they local, regional?
Regional.
Yeah.
I think they're doing their capacity is probably 4 or 5 thousand birds a day.
Sure.
One of them does strictly chicken. The other one will do turkeys as well. But 4 to 5 thousand birds a day is about max on chickens for them.
And do you have to have a certain percentage of those? You have to have, do you have to have a minimum number that you're bringing per slot?
No, there's people that show up with a dozen in a crate and drop them off when we're there, and then there's some that show up with a whole big trailer or semi load of them. So
Gotcha. And then the storage side of that, let's finish up with the pigs and the beef. I think the beef is maybe a little more understandable, although maybe it's not. But what about pig processing? Is it similar, where you need to have slots in advance, or how does that work?
Yeah, right now, pig and beef processing slots are much easier to get than they were a couple of years ago. During the pandemic, and then for a while after that, if you weren't locked in on that, you couldn't get a spot anywhere. There wasn't any capacity for a while, but that's loosened up quite a bit. So, but we do schedule that stuff like with our processor that does our beef and our pork. We schedule what I think we're going to have or have need for about a year in advance as well. But that doesn't mean that I can't call them up and say, hey, can I get some slots 30 days away or 2 months away? Currently they're fairly accommodating on that if I need something sooner, but we're still planning that stuff about a year in advance as well.
Would you say that's similar for beef and pork then? Those two?
Yeah, beef and pork working much the same way, yes.
Yeah. All of it is production season through the growing season and then harvest, and just hope you have enough inventory to get you to the next round of harvesting. Is that how that works?
Yeah. That's where the challenge comes in. We put a lot of product into cold storage this time of year, and there's a big investment in inventory, a big investment in inventory since we're not processing stuff on a monthly basis. So we carry a lot of inventory at this time of the year, and by summertime next year, it's going to be down to where it's getting low, and we'll start restocking again.
Sure. Do you, okay, so the only thing being born there, if I'm understanding the operation correctly, is the beef animals. Is that right? Everything
Correct.
else is purchased in.
And not all the beef are born there either.
Sure.
We do have a cow calf operation within the cow herd, and we do partner with some cooperative producers to finish some beef for us too that do do things the same way, use the same protocols that we do. So we've been fortunate to find some other producers that are good at finishing beef, and we've partnered with some of them.
Sure. And you'll buy those animals on the hoof from them at a certain premium over the market. Is that how that works?
Correct.
Or, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. So talk to me a little bit about the cash flow, and, you've talked about the investment in cold storage. How are you guys, or what are some of the things that you really have to pay attention to make that work?
Yeah. Well, with that much inventory, cash flow, yeah, there's a big capital investment this time of year, because the production enterprise is selling to the marketing enterprise. So, there's a cash transaction there, and then any outside beef that we're buying that, from these cooperative producers, there's obviously an outflow of cash there. And then we rent commercial cold storage to put things in, and we've chosen that route instead of investing in on-farm or large on-farm storage. We do have some on-farm storage. Everything will come out of the rented cold storage and come back to the farm or the farm store. And we have probably about a week, probably about 10 days to 2 weeks worth of storage on the farm. And then the rest of that's rented storage.
Sure.
We find that cheaper and easier to manage than trying to invest in the money of having that on site ourselves and having to maintain and manage that.
Yeah, because there's repairs and economies of scale and all those things that I'm sure come into those equations, right?
Yeah.
Is there more demand than there is supply for these pastured proteins in your context?
I would say yes, but at the same time, that we're not sold out. We have inventory, but the reason I say yes is because our business, it continues to grow on an annual basis at about 100% annually right now.
Wow.
So you were asking about cash flow here a little bit ago. That kind of growth, the first year or two, you grow 100%. That's not such a big deal, but you grow 100% 3, 4, 5 years in a row. That starts becoming a big deal, and it certainly takes capital to make that thing work. So, at some point, I don't have any interest in seeing it continue to grow at 100%.
Yeah, talk about compounding and cascading effects, huh?
Yes. It's when a growing business, you have to keep feeding cash into it. There's a capital investment required. So
yeah, for sure. And talk to me a little bit more about that, about what it takes to grow at that level. What are some of the lessons learned, mistakes made, some of those things as far as continuing to grow?
Well, I think I'm still learning, learning on a daily basis there. On the smaller size, like I say, it's more manageable. But once you start reaching some scale and some volume, certainly the sales, the ongoing sales cash flow, some of that. But there's times when the ongoing sales don't cash flow everything that we're putting into the freezer. So there's times that I may make a personal loan or even use a line of credit occasionally, which I don't really like doing. But we'll put some outside money into it occasionally just to funnel some of this growth, or to feed some of this growth. But that's a challenging situation to be in. So trying not to use debt and not totally adverse to debt, but very, very cautious about that. So a lot of the growth we funded just through personal cash.
What do you think it is that causes a consumer to choose you over somebody else in your neighborhood? I mean, do you have a sense of how that happens or what that looks like?
A lot of people are coming to us just because they want to know where their food's coming from. They want to connect with their farmer. They want to connect with where the food's being raised at. Then what becomes important beyond that when you ask why do they choose us versus the neighbor, because there's certainly lots of options out there. We have neighbors that are doing direct marketing as well. So and a lot of them are cheaper than what we are, but the story is what really makes a difference. And in addition to the story is the type of product. We're differentiating ourselves from a lot of other local producers in the way we do things. We're very much into the regenerative journey, and we're regenerating soil health, and we're regenerating life above the soil as well. And as you know from some of the connections you have with understanding ag and the phytonutrient research that's coming out, that there is a difference in the quality and the nutrient and phytonutrient richness of the meat depending on how it's raised. So once you tell that story to people, then it becomes rather easy uh, to make that relationship and a long lasting relationship.
Talk to me about kind of the story that you're telling that is resonating. What is that story? Is it more than the soil health, or are you literally communicating the 6 principles of soil health to your people? Is it just pictures from the farm? What is the story you're communicating that's resonating?
Yeah, when they can come out and see what we're doing, we're very transparent, very open. Jenny gives a lot of tours. People come out to the farm and want to pick up their products. And there's usually chickens nearby. There's usually pigs nearby. Sometimes the cattle are nearby, so they can go out in the pasture and see what's going on, see how this food's being raised, interact with these animals, and that really resonates. So, that's a big thing.
Sure. Yep. And is that story being communicated also on social media, or would you say the bigger piece of that connection with the consumer is coming through the actual just openness of the farm?
Both ways. We're approaching that both ways, certainly in social media, and the newsletter that we send out on a weekly basis, that's communicated, sprinkled in there as well. So yeah, that story's being told throughout all of our marketing efforts.
Yeah, and I have no idea what the answer to this question is, but I'm going to ask it anyways. I don't know what the answer to many questions are. That's why I asked them. But anyways, but this one in particular, I have a hunch that your email drives a lot of your revenue. Is that true in your experience, or is email as powerful or more powerful than social media in your experience?
The emails, the way we're currently using the email, I think it's a good way to keep our customers or people that are interested in becoming customers apprised of what's going on. And we're still fine tuning that, and I think we're still trying to figure out ways to use that weekly email as an educational tool and not just a promotional tool.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I understand that. I've just always been blown away when I've asked people what their most powerful tool is as far as the marketing is concerned, and I have yet to have anyone tell me it's not email, which just blows me away because I'm not that guy. I don't feel like email works necessarily, although I did just buy a fairly expensive podcast course that was marketed to me through email. So, it does work, but
what's interesting to me is there's oftentimes somebody will make a purchase for the first time and we'll go back and look, or they might even tell us that, well, we've been subscribing to your email for the last 6 months. And or we'll go back and look and we'll find out that they started subscribing 4, 5, 6 months ago, and they're not ready to, the first time they see us, they're not ready to make a purchase
Hmm.
for whatever reason. Maybe we haven't earned their trust. Maybe they just don't know completely what's going on. So, that email, I think, is very important in building and helping build that trust, and building those relationships that people are comfortable to start entering into.
What do you think? You said that you guys were direct marketing grass-fed beef for a long time before the pandemic, and then started with the broilers, the layers, and the pork after that. And was that management? Would you call the management prior to with the grass-fed beef? Would you call that management regenerative as well?
No, it wasn't regenerative at all.
Okay. Was it? I mean, rotationally grazed, set stock?
No, we were set stock, conventionally grazing,
Okay.
uh, feeding a lot of harvested forages, a lot of hay throughout the year, and not regenerative in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. So we got to pull that thread then.
Yes.
Why? How did you get to what was the transition? What brought you around?
Well, what brought me around was observing over time what was happening with our soil,
Hmm.
and with the production. I started, we for many years we had a large hay operation. We sold a lot of hay commercially, specialized in selling high quality small square bales to the horse market, and ship that hay all over the country. And
Hmm.
I say all over the country, primarily down in the South, Florida and Georgia, and what we didn't sell locally, a lot of it went by semi loads down south. But anyway, through observation of what was happening to production, it took more and more inputs, more and more fertilizer to keep the same production, or even try to achieve similar levels of production each year. Um, I just started seeing the ecosystem functions not working the way they should, and I really didn't understand at the time what to do differently, but I knew something was wrong. And I really started reflecting on that. And at one point, I got discouraged enough that or disgruntled enough that I thought, I'm about ready to just give up on this, and maybe I'll just sit here and watch everything grow up and see what happens with it. And with that realization, I started looking for some answers on how to do things differently. And I don't know whether it's an old Chinese proverb, or where the saying comes from, but there's a saying that goes something along the lines of, when you're ready to learn, a teacher will appear.
Mm.
And so I started finding myself with opportunities to here's people out here that are doing things in a different way than that I've been doing them, and shame on me for not paying closer attention earlier on, but I can't change the past. I can only change what I'm doing now. So started paying attention to what was going on out here in the regenerative world, and it didn't take me very long to rise to the top and find understanding ag, and what they were doing, and what their clients were accomplishing. And I thought, this makes sense to me. It really makes sense. I've been in agriculture all my life. I've got over 40 years in farming, and I've always been trying to do things the right way. But like said, often within understanding ag, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't implement what you don't know. So uh, once I was exposed to that, that was kind of the aha moment. Oh, this makes sense, and this is what I'm going to start doing.
Yeah. Yep. And when was that? When did that transition happen?
That happened, well, in practice, it happened late in the growing season in 2021.
Hmm.
So I started, 2020, 2021, I was starting to research and beginning to understand what was going on in the regenerative space. But it wasn't until late 21 and then so beginning in the growing season of 2022 is when we went full bore in that direction. We stopped haying, we stopped putting on any commercial inputs. We went cold turkey, and at that time there was still just cattle in the operation, and started using the cattle as a tool to start building proper soil function and restoring these ecosystem processes.
Yeah, that process has continued, I'm sure, to net positive results. I mean, you're early on in that journey, right? I mean,
Yes, yeah, we're early on in that journey, but we're seeing, we've seen results right away from it, and the results are starting to become exponential. The first few years down this journey, they're typically linear,
mm-hmm. Yep.
and after 3 or 4 or 5 years, those results become exponential, and we're certainly entering into that phase now.
Nice. And that was kind of where I was started on this line of questioning, because I had a faulty assumption. What do you think is missing, or what is added by the broilers, the layers, and the pigs? Or another way to ask that same question is, how much faster do you think this change is happening because of their presence than it would without?
Yeah, I'm seeing things happen faster. I haven't been down this long enough to say, well, we can document this and this and this, but just through observation of what's going on out there right now, that it's certainly moving the needle quicker by having multi-species out there.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what the mechanism is or why that's happening? I mean, just different ways of interacting with the landscape, or do you have a sense of what's driving that?
Yeah, it's that diversity component.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diversity.
Yeah.
Part of that 634, we see the diversity in every one of those, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. And I think that a chicken obviously scratches through manure patties and does things differently on the landscape than a cow does, and so that's part of it. And then, like you said, the diversity and the disruption of introducing a pig into the equation in a different place and a different time for a different purpose.
Yeah, yeah. And in nature, that's how everything interacts. There aren't single species of anything running around out here, so we're closer to the way nature would function by having these multi-species out here.
Yeah. Yep. The proverbial egret on the rhino's nose, right? When we look at these different contexts around the world, where there are multiple species out there, they do intermingle, and sometimes harder to see it in our own context than in others, but yeah, they're there.
Yep, exactly.
They're there.
And as things progress, there's more wildlife.
Yep.
Yeah, we see a lot more wildlife, lot more birds. See birds we haven't seen in years. See a lot more insects. See insects that I haven't seen for in any sizable populations for many years.
Right. Yep. I live in a fairly brittle environment, and I think that the managers here are better than average because of that. You can't get away with set stocking. The grass will not be there if you continue to graze it. They're, just will not produce. And
that's a flaw, I think, in our area of the country. We're certainly not in a brittle environment, and rain can cover a lot of sins.
Mm-hmm.
So, people aren't forced to manage that way, and frankly, we aren't even educated or trained to manage that way in this part of the country.
Right. And because of that, I think that the Well, another big contributing factor is the Black Hills of South Dakota has had a massive influx of population. And so the elk herds are being driven out of the mountains of the Black Hills back into the prairies where they were when Lewis and Clark came through. And so, and I think that also another contributing factor is that there's actually grass out here. The managers have figured out how to manage, I would say in a lot of places it's degrading more slowly than it would be otherwise. It's maybe not regenerating or improving year over year, but it's degrading more slowly. But I do think that that's part of what's attracting the elk back to the prairies in this part of the world, is that there's actually grass here for them to come back to. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see that play out over the next 20 years or so, see how that population changes. So
most people in our part of the country don't even realize that bison and elk were native to this area at one time.
Right. Yeah.
They equate bison and elk to western parts of the country, not around here.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Anything else that you really think is important as far as this marketing pastured proteins piece, or things that you think really need to be pointed out?
I can't think of anything at the moment.
Okay. Well, yeah, John, thanks for your time today.
Appreciate it, Clay. Quite an honor to be on here.
Very good stuff there with John. Really appreciate him and sharing, the journey that they've been on, and just the soil health perspective was pretty surprising to me. The ability to make that transition and be profitable in competition with some of the corn and soybean acres. That was a very surprising revelation to me. So hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Really looking forward to sharing with you my conversation next week with Jared Lumen. Jared is been the host of the Herd Quitter podcast for a long time, but now has recently rebranded the podcast to Ranching Returns. And we talked to him a little bit about that and the ethos of the podcast and some of the ways that he's thinking about the naming of the podcast. But then we get into this really great conversation about the investments that Jared has been using off the farm and about real estate investment. And we talked to him about some of the resources that he's used to help him understand how to go about investing in real estate. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you, and really looking forward to the episode after that as well. Got a great episode coming your way for episode 400 of the Working Cows podcast, and we'll just keep you in suspense about who the guest is for that one for a couple of weeks. But we look forward to that conversation with Jared Lumen coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.